For the summer series episodes on the Everyday VOpreneur podcast, I've been inviting voice actors onto the show to ask me a pressing question in their voiceover business and get, hopefully, a helpful answer. My guest today has a question about branding, which is a subject that I know very little about, so this should be a really informative and helpful episode. Welcome, Susan Hohman.
Hi there. Nice to see you.
So, you have a question about branding. What is your question?
Okay, so it's not specifically about how to brand. It's uh what's branding worth? Like at what point do you dive in and brand? When is the return on investment, the ROI worthwhile?
This is a really great question. So, I wore my Dr. Pepper hat
I
today
noticed that.
for a reason. Normally, I don't have a hat on during the podcast. For anybody who's ever watched it on YouTube, you know this, but I wore my Dr. Pepper hat for a reason because I think that there are a lot of different ways that branding can be interpreted. Now, generally speaking, if somebody asks me a question about branding, the very first thing I do is say, you should talk to Celia Siegel because
Yeah.
Celia Siegel is the branding expert. And I've had Celia on the show to talk about branding in the past as well. But what I can do is share some thoughts from my personal experience. And the first thing I would say is I don't have a clearly defined brand. Now, should I? Probably. Would it be helpful for me? Likely. But I've never actually sat down and done it. The brand for me has evolved over time. And I think there's different ways that you can look at it. So there's a brand where you tell a clear story about who you are and what you have to offer. You build a brand around that service, around that story, around that narrative. But then I think that there's just as easily the associations that get made with a personal brand. And so that's why I wore my Dr. Pepper hat today. Anytime somebody sees something that involves Dr. Pepper, people instinctively think of me. People
Sure.
send me Dr. Pepper things. Danny States, or no, Dustin Ebaugh actually sent me this Dr. Pepper hat. Danny States sent me my toque. So people send me things. There's an automatic association that is there. I would say the same for barbecue. When people think about barbecue, they think about Marc Scott. When I'm walking around at VO Atlanta carrying a case of Dr. Pepper under my arm and handing out random cans in the crowd, that's just part of me and a brand that I've built over time. Now, what does that have to do with voiceover? Absolutely nothing.
Interesting.
But it's benefited me because there is an instant association that gets made. And so when people think Dr. Pepper, they think Marc Scott. Just like when people think marketing, they think Marc Scott. Those are brand associations that have been made over time. Once upon a time, I went through a spell where I booked pretty much every single explainer video that I auditioned for. And all the ones that I wasn't auditioning for either. And so I went through a season where I had we'll call it a sub brand, where I was the explainer guy, created a totally separate website, used that explainer guy mantra, came up with some fun reels and different things that I did. And I marketed that as the explainer guy. I marketed myself as the explainer guy very intentionally to a very strategic audience. And for about 3 years, when my particular read was what was banking in explainer, I just rode that wave for as long as I could. And then when that stopped, then I changed. And so there was another evolution. And, now I'm trying to get into documentary, and I've started doing things that will hopefully associate me with documentary. And so my brand is just a living, breathing thing that has evolved over time. And I've been able to make that work for me. On the flip side of that, is there a case to be made for developing a very clear and established brand that tells a very clear and distinct story about you and your business? I would say that in the right circumstance, there can be. Now, listening to your voice, I think it would be safe to assume that you are someone who would exceed or could do exceedingly well in children's narrations, right?
That's the goal.
That's the goal. Children's stories, children's e-learning, children's apps, toys and games, all of these things. Fair?
Got it. Fair.
So you have a very distinct value proposition and a very distinct story that you could tell on that brand. Me, I'm jack of all trade, master of none, right? I'll do your e-learning, I'll do your commercial, I'll do your corporate video, I'll do your explainer. I can sound like this guy or that guy or whatever. And so there's not, I'm sure if I sat down with Celia, she would find the theme and build the
Yes.
story, but I'm kind of all over the place. But if you want to move in that very specific direction, there is a case to be made for creating a brand around that. So what does that look like? I mean, basic branding, I think, are those simple things that make you identifiable. So, for example, there's a British runner named Marc Scott, and I don't know specifically what, I just know he runs. So I don't know if he's like Olympic level or what. I just know he runs, and I know he runs because I get tagged all the time in posts on social media from people who are trying to tag him. But I'm not worried, even though his audience is getting mixed up with me, I'm not worried about my audience getting mixed up with him, because I know that across all my social media, there's uniform photos, there's uniform colors, there's like uniform fonts, there's things that are easily recognizable and identifiable as, oh, that's Marc Scott, VOpreneur. So I think you can start on a basic level with some of the basic building blocks of the brand just by using brand colors, brand fonts, having a logo that builds an association with you, right? That's the building blocks of creating your brand identity, using the same headshots, going out and getting headshots done, using those same headshots across all your social media profiles, your online casting profiles, et cetera, right? Those are the basic things that you can do. Where you can take that a step further then is in creating your taglines, building a brand identity, having that story that gets told, and then incorporating that very specific messaging into the way that you write copy on your website, into the way that you write copy for emails, into the way that you say things, and the way that you present yourself on social media, and so on and so on and so forth. This is all tracking so far.
Right. So consistency, basically.
Consistency is a big part of it, right? It's forming a brand identity and being consistent. Now, that being said, because I'm going to be completely unhelpful in the midst of this episode, I've had 17 different logos in the course of my career. And if you asked my clients, how many logos has Marc Scott had? I'm guessing that 99 out of 100 of my clients would say, I don't know, one. Like, I don't know how much they're actually paying attention to that stuff. Now, counterpoint to that, I have had people reach out, and Cameron, if you're listening, yes, I'm telling your story again. Cameron's not the only one though, but I've had people reach out to me in the past and say, when I'm flipping through YouTube, I know when I've found one of your videos by the thumbnails because of the colors and the distinct background and all of those things that I use. And so there's an instant brand association that before they even see what the video is or what the title is or whatever, they're like, that's a Marc Scott video.
I agree.
They know, right? There's a brand association that has been built there. So if I went and changed all of my colors tomorrow, I would have to reconnect all of those people who are making those associations. So these are things that I would say that you think about as well. You got a lot of red in the background there. Is that one of your colors?
Actually, no.
No, those are just the panels that were on sale on Amazon that day.
It's my favorite color.
It's your favorite color, but it's not the color you use in your branding.
Yeah.
Is there a reason for that?
I think I went for more bright, cheerful, maybe more youthful colors.
So you were trying to make an association that ties back and tells the story of your voice.
Exactly.
So see, you're already thinking about branding.
But this makes me happy.
It's your space. It
my
should make
happy
you happy.
place, right?
It should make you happy. I also saw the 24 in the background. I was like, oh, you used to be a Jeff Gordon fan?
Just my favorite number. But
so all of that comes back to I think if you talk to Celia, brand expert, she would say that every one of us has a distinct brand inside of us, and we just need someone to help us pull it out. And I think she's 100% right. I just don't know if that is the most necessary thing, depending on where you're at in your career, when there are so many other things to spend money on, right? So many other investments to make.
Yes.
Counterpoint to that, Celia would say that once you have your brand, that's going to come into the website design. It's going to come into the demos that you make. It's going to, so it one thing dominoes into the other, which I think is also a valid argument. I do think, based on your voice and what you are trying to accomplish in your career, that there is a very clear brand story that could get told there, because people may not instantly make the association. So,
Yeah.
do you need to go out tomorrow and make massive investments in a full-blown branding package? Not specifically, but do you filter the things that you are doing through the lens of what you are trying to accomplish, and choose your brand colors according to what you're trying to accomplish? Choose a tagline according to what you're trying to accomplish. Have your logo designed with that whole story in mind, so that everything ultimately ties together and paints that youthful, childlike vibe that you're trying to give off to be able to do the apps and the toys and the games and all of that sort of stuff. Yeah, I think that there are ways that you can pull all of that together. Have you read Celia's book?
Yes.
So reading Celia's book, I think, should be essential reading for any voice actor, regardless of how you feel about branding or whether or not you're ready to brand or whatever. Actually taking the time, though, to work through those exercises. Look, it's freaking hard.
It's hard, yeah.
Did you do it, or were you like,
Um,
holy crap, this is really hard?
a little of both.
I'll tell you straight up. I was like, holy crap, this is
Yeah.
really hard.
It hurt my
And
head.
when I was actually going through it, I actually did call Celia on the other side of that and was like, Celia, I just read your book. And I'm like, this is really hard. And I booked a session with her. I didn't go through the full branding experience with her, but I booked a session with her to walk through some of the elements of the book and some of the questions that she asked in the book, so that I could have her help me flush some of that out. And that's part of the process that I went through. So I rebranded Viopreneur in 2023, changed the logo out, changed, the logo change came a little bit later, but changed the website out, changed a lot of the language, just really developed, wiped out Marc Scott coaching, took that right off the face of the map, and just totally dove into Viopreneur. And that was a byproduct of having a conversation with Celia, reading her book, and then having a conversation with her, and just helping to get a more clear understanding of my brand and the message that I was trying to put out and what I was trying to accomplish. So I don't know if this is helpful at all, because like I gave you arguments on both sides of the
Exactly.
conversation. It sounds like you're moving in the right direction, because you do know what you want to accomplish, and you're taking that into consideration while you're working through the process. When you are at a stage where you're ready to go to the next level, that might be the next step for you, is working with a branding expert, whether it's Celia or somebody else, who can help you to really clearly identify that story and narrow in, so that you do have common language, a common pitch, that 30-second elevator pitch. You're saying the same thing to everybody every time.
That's
It's
hard.
Voiceover Marketing Playbook is a step-by-step, easy-to-follow marketing course that will teach you how to find your own leads, build your own client base, and become the consistently working voice actor you want to be. Do you know how many times I've said that in my life? Now, prior to actually sitting down and working through that thought process of how I wanted the brand for Playbook to be presented, I said something different every time somebody asked me to explain Playbook. Now I have a very clear story that I can tell. And there are probably a lot of other people who could say it too. As I'm saying the line in the podcast, there are probably people who are finishing the sentence for me, because it's been said so many times. They've heard it so many times that the association is there, just like Dr. Pepper or barbecue or whatever. So creating that brand story becomes the next step for you, so that you're consistently putting out an identical message. So when you go to a networking event and people say, what do you do? And you say, I'm Susan and and you give them your brand line or whatever. You've got a consistent message that feeds all the way across. And that message ties back to your overall identity as well. It syncs with the colors, it syncs with the tagline, it syncs with the logo, it syncs with the demos. And so then everybody has a clear picture of who you are and what you do and what you have to offer.
Sounds good. Sounds hard, but it sounds good.
Sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah.
Sounds like another investment. Thanks for helping me spend more money, Marc. I
Right.
appreciate it. Always great to talk to you.
It does sound kind of necessary, though. I agree.
Let's go back to to your first question and part of what you said, which was you talked about the ROI of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think there is. I think there is an ROI for you. I think when you get that clear brand identity created, I think there does become an ROI for you in how you are now able to present yourself and talk about yourself to any potential leader client that you come into contact with. And so, are there investments that we make where there's not ROI? Yep. Yeah, that's part of the rite of passage of voiceover. We've all been there, done that, and
Lots
spent
of
money
that.
in the wrong places, myself included.
Yeah.
This is one of those areas where for you, I think there is absolutely an ROI on the other side of that.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, professionalism.
Professionalism and telling a good story.
Yeah.
All right, Susan, I hope this has been helpful.
It's been excellent. Thank you.